Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. Daniel Jugenis coming to you from London, the United Kingdom. Hope you're all well. It's been a very interesting weekend. Well, the whole past couple of weeks has been a very interesting period of time. I may have mentioned this before. My last video entry seems like a lifetime ago now, but I never thought I would see the scenes or witness the scenes that are occurring in society during my lifetime. Some of the things I'm witnessing come straight from history books. For example, during World War II in Britain, there was rationing, so people had to queue to get a bottle of milk or a loaf of bread, or their groceries, and everything's rationed. So you were only allowed a certain amount of each item, and it's really like that now. Certainly with the big supermarkets, where most things is like two per person, which I kind of understand because the stupidity, greed, and selfishness of many people in society who bulk buy and left nothing on the shelves for anybody else. We're at this situation now where it's been necessary to implement these things. Personally, I don't think it's necessary, but now we have a situation where the food chain, well, rather the transport chain of getting food and produce into the stores has been severely disrupted. I have a very good friend who's also an actor, Forbes, who was discussing this on his Facebook status. I mean, he does HGV, heavy goods vehicle driving. He was a lorry driver in between acting jobs, so he was discussing this, and apparently, because there's a break in the link with European hauliers actually pulling out of the UK due to Brexit. There's like a big hole there. So other drivers, haulage firms from other sectors who may transport rock stars, musicians, theatre productions, they've been drafted in to pick up the slack. So that's where we're at. It's yeah, very interesting times and very much a tangled web, which leads me into what I really wanted to discuss. And it's when science fiction becomes science fact. There are a couple of examples I can quote that come to mind. I think in my Friday video edition, I mentioned Soylent Green, and because a friend of mine actually responded and mentioned Soylent Green, that it's with us. I won't go into what Soylent Green is about, but essentially, times are hard. People are homeless, live nowhere, and there is this food substitute called Soylent Green. And because things are very terrible and very hard, the masses don't actually uh, ask any questions about what's in it, how it's produced, etc., etc. But I won't go into that bit of it. I would suggest watch the film. Watch the film. It's about, I think it's a 1973 release. It's notable for the fact that Charlton Heston's in it. He was doing his sci-fi thing, and Soylent Green was one of those films that he headlined up in the early 70s. I think the other was the Omega Man, and prior to that, in the late 60s, it was Planet of the Apes. So he was doing his dystopian science fiction thing. Soylent Green is also notable in that it is the last major film role of one Edward G. Robinson. Look him up, great actor. Played some very good roles during his career. The original Scarface, but I'm getting off the point here. Yeah, dystopian science fiction. When that science fiction becomes science fact, I don't think we're quite at the situation of Soylent Green, but there are a couple of examples. One's gone out of my mind. The other one is a novel I read by Philip K. Dick called Doctor Blood Money. I find it a very strange novel, but then I find Philip K. Dick Strange, his work at least. I mean, Dr. Blood Money involves not a nuclear strike, but actually some nuclear accident, if I remember. I read the book a few years ago, and society has radically changed. There are people who did things they would not normally do. But the architect of this disaster, Dr. Bloodman, is actually living among a community in California, I think it was. It's a very strange work, but it does illustrate in a strange way what happens when you have a disaster. Or I mean, in this case, it wasn't a pandemic, it was a nuclear disaster. But if the COVID-19 situation got a whole lot worse, then we would be in Dr. Blood Money territory. Simply that, masses of people die, society would change, and people would do things they would never do. I think there's one character, a lady, who was probably the nicest, straight-laced lady you'd ever see, but when this disaster happens, she goes out and has sex with the first man she meets. Crazy, eh? But we're crazy people as a species. And that was at the back of my mind. The other one that comes to mind is the Planet of the Apes. More the reboot. Was it Dawn of the Planet of the Apes? I've never been a big fan of the ape films. I think maybe the first two or three. Charlton Heston was in the first two, and the third one, what was it? Escape from Planet of the Apes. Yeah, but Dawn of the Planet of the Apes it ends with a situation where this chemical thing, which was supposed to cure dementia or something, it makes the primates, the apes, smarter, and in the long run decimates human society, because one man gets affected in San Francisco and he's flying all over the world. So he spreads he spreads the effects of this vaccine, which in the long run obviously makes the apes smarter. They're already strong, but it makes them smarter and more intelligent. But at the same time, it has the opposite and adverse effect on human beings in that it dumbs them down. Now, the COVID-19 virus is not going to dumb anybody down, but I mean, it has killed a lot of people. And it just it makes me think about, this whole thing with science fiction when it becomes science fact. And then, I think, worst case scenario, we've got hell on earth. And it just makes me wonder, why the hell people produce these things. Now, they're talking about COVID-19. I know about as much about it as anybody else, but its origin is Wuhan territory in China. There is some biological lab in that area, and we are supposed to believe that it originated from bats. Well, I'm very cynical about such things. Plus, when the pandemic happened, the Chinese authorities, the Communist Party, tried to shut it down. And it's just made matters worse. And this is the other thing that I wasn't going to discuss because it wasn't at the back of my mind, but when such disasters happen, I'll take my glasses off because of the glare. When disasters of any kind happen on a major scale, it really tests the system of government and the kind of society that we're living in. Serious questions need to be asked about the whole one-party communist state of China, in that they try to control everything. If they had come out and said earlier what had happened, I think the rest of the world would have been able to respond in a certain way, which they didn't. By the time governments around the world started to respond to it, well, it had gone around the world, because obviously people go to China. Chinese people travel. So again, like the ending of that movie Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, one man travels overseas, he spreads it to other people traveling around the world, and then you have this pandemic. Uh, it's still early days it's really early days to say how bad this, how much worse, the coronavirus COVID-19 will be. But right now, where I am, it's like a ghost town. You hear the motorcycle, you hear the voices of some people. I think there's a couple of rowdy Africans going on in their lounge about something. I don't know what it is, but you know what? I don't need to hear it, but you're hearing it anyway. So it seems that this thing is going to be with us for a while. I'm thinking that by the summer, if we have a really good summer in Britain, it gets really warm, it might kill it, but who knows? I mean, politicians talk about a year, 2 years, but do I really want to be sitting on my hands for 2 years? Well, there's not a lot I can do. The whole acting thing, whole showbiz thing's just shut down. There's no auditions, or castings. Nobody's wanting to see actors right now, so that's kind of done. In terms of other areas of work, I want to work, but is it even worth it? To be quite honest, I mean, people are going out and working, people still looking for jobs. But from, as I said in my Friday video entry, I've just kind of completely stopped. And in doing that, there is a sense of peace and calm, because I'm not that dog chasing its tail and not getting anywhere. So I'm trying to find some advantage out of the current situation, crisis. And one of the things I've done is to just stop and let things happen and let the cards fall where they may. Because I think that's the only way I think we are going to get through this. Now, each person to their own, we all deal with a crisis in our own way. Some for the better, some for the worse. I mean, we've seen the darker side of it, where suddenly people are bulk buying and clearing the shelves of supermarkets, and nobody else can get anything. And as I've discussed before, if you have a lot of money in the bank, you have a regular income, you're in work, whatever, you can go out and you can shop anytime you like. Now, if you are elderly, retired, on a pension, you are disabled, you cannot work through no fault of your own, but you are on state benefits, welfare if you will, or if you're simply unemployed. Okay, now, the groups of people that I've mentioned are on welfare. They're getting some kind of state aid, or they're getting their pension. Now, they will get paid at a certain time each month. I don't think they do it weekly anymore, but each month. So they can only go out and do what they need to do and shop and get the things they need at a certain time. So if they get paid and they say, or their carer helper says, right, we're going to go out and get and shop for them, then they go there, and then there's nothing on the shelves. How are they going to live? How are they going to survive? So, we kind of need to get past this kind of selfish, and I'm talking from a British perspective here, the kind of selfish, me stance that we've had in this country since 1979, since the advent of Margaret Thatcher, and the whole culture of self-interest. I matter. I matter. Only I matter. Nobody else matters. To hell with everybody else. That has got to change, and I think it is starting to change, because I think when people find, even those, liberal elite, find that they're just like everybody else, If they go to, a large store in America, it might be Safeways, Walmart. Here it's Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Morrison's, Asda. Where it is, they're no different from anybody else because they've got a queue outside that store, and they're only allowed two items, just like the poorest man or woman in society. So when it comes down to a crisis like this, you need to buy grocery and things. They're no better than anybody else. Because you can talk about the wealth, money, and then they will survive this crisis better. But then again, some of us who are not in that same situation will survive just as well, even better, uh, because we're smart, but because we have been dealing with adversity. In the United Kingdom, Britain, we've been dealing with austerity measures by the Conservative government for the past 10 years. So there's a lot of people out there who are suffering. So at the moment, this crisis is just it's making things a little bit harder, but not as hard as it's going to be for those who have had the best of everything, and now they're going to be struggling to find, because they're going to be struggling to stock up their fridges and stuff like that, because they're in the same boat as everybody else. The haves are now in the same situation as the have-nots, and they've got a queue, and then they can't buy 3 loaves of bread or whatever. Or they can only buy 2 of anything. That's the policy of most of the major supermarket chains in the United Kingdom. So that's where we're at, really. And what can you say? It is what it is. As I've mentioned before, I've been living this way for the past 18 months. I just really kind of, income is low, or in some cases non-existent. So you do things, would rather I do things or go out when I really need to do it. And for me, it is business as usual. Some people said, well, you're being arrogant, you're being selfish, blah blah blah. It's not. It's how I've been living my life for the past 18 months. And the people who make that accusation, they have not been living my life. I'm not going to go into this again because it's in a previous entry. I am who I am. I hang my basket where I can reach it. I don't overspend or, put myself out there where I'm owing huge sums of money. Well, I do owe huge sums of money, but that's a debt that I manage as a freelancer. Uh, I'm not paid every week or every month. Well, in some cases, every year, not even every year. Sometimes there's nothing coming in. But that's my life. That's a lie that I lead. You could argue that I chose to do it that way because I'm so in love with freelancing and being an actor that one takes the rough with the smooth. But me, no, nobody can criticize me. Well, they can, but at the end of the day, they don't live my life. They don't deal with adversity, rejection, what have you, on a daily basis. I do. I'm still here. I'm still surviving. That's why, you know, every day is the same. Every day, it's. There's been no major change for me. This is where I am. This is where I'm at. So those are some of the things that I wanted to discuss. I mean, the two main things was the dystopian thing and the two examples of Planet of the Apes and Doctor Blood Money. Should really check out Doctor Blood Money. It's a very strange story, but it's not too dissimilar from where we're at. It was written in, I think, the early 70s. So again, you're dealing with the Cold War and nuclear annihilation. So it seems a bit dated, which much of this Philip K. Dick stuff is dated, which is why they kind of work better when dramatized. Man in High Castle is the Amazon production is a clear example. It differs from the novel greatly, but the theme is still there. You know, an alternate reality where Nazi Germany won the war, conquered America, and they did that in one nuclear strike on Washington D.C. That again, as always, I'm going off a little point, but I've kind of discussed the main points I wanted to discuss today. I sound a bit solemn, but then again, you know, it's very quiet. It's very calm. I went to pick up a computer keyboard in Blackfriars, central London, in the city of London there, and I walked there. I mean, it's about 30-minute walk, something like that. Hardly ever saw anybody. There's people around, but there's not many. It's pretty much like a ghost town, which is kind of interesting on a bright, sunny spring Sunday in March. I mean, the weather is the same today. You know, it's clear blue skies, the sun is shining. It's a bit cold, but you don't really need heavy coats anymore. Although I'm still wearing gloves because of this COVID-19 thing, which by now I wouldn't be wearing gloves at all. So there you have it. So that's it for today. So as always, be good to yourself, be good to each other, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. So enjoy the day for what it brings. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye now.